All right. Hello, everybody. I
Hello and
am,
welcome. We've been doing these skill sharings now for a couple of weeks. They've been so awesome for people to plug into their strengths and share them with everyone inside of Rose City and then outside of Rose City through the YouTube videos that we're capturing. So we are recording this one right now as well. We have Hangry Spice here. She's been a wrecker for 1 year, but she's been in the housing market in Portland doing appraisals and figuring out the ins and outs of this stuff for 5 years. So I'm very pleased to have her here to chat with us a little bit about the rental market in general, and then currently right now in the time of COVID-19. So with that, I will let Hangry take it away. If you guys have questions, put them in the Q&A, and I will feed the questions through the Q&A throughout the presentation. But otherwise, Hangry, go for it.
all right, perfect. Thank you so much. So my name is Hangry Spice, or Amy. I am a commercial real estate appraiser licensed in Oregon and Washington. I was recently furloughed from my company because of coronavirus. And in that, I lost access to using my webcam on my company laptop. So you will unfortunately not be seeing my lovely face today. But it's probably a better thing because I am in the process of moving apartments and my apartment is a mess. But so I moved to Portland in 2015, where I got hired as an appraisal assistant specializing in apartments. So I have seen probably every single type of rental housing in the state of Oregon and in like Southern Washington, from Vancouver to Camas to Longview. I like to tell people when I enter their homes, because that's part of the process, that I have seen it all. I know amenities that you would not consider to be amenities that landlords consider to be amenities. And I've dealt with everything from 3-unit deals to 400-unit deals. I've dealt with nationwide management companies. I have dealt with small mom and pop people who, only own a 4-unit property that they rent out and they run and manage themselves. If somebody is trying to rent an apartment, I have probably talked to somebody similar to them. So with all of that, combined with my experience of being a renter in the city of Portland, I have been able to sort of streamline the moving process in terms of choosing an apartment. I like to say that I know almost every single apartment complex in the city of Portland. I'm close to being as knowledgeable about Gresham, Beaverton, and Hillsborough, but we're not quite there yet. All right, so after more technical difficulties, here we go. Moving sucks, and so does being stuck in a rental you hate. About 6 months ago, I actually tore my ACL in my left leg, and I was housebound in my 400 square foot studio with my dog, and I realized how small 400 square feet is for me. Without having the luxury to walk from my bedroom to my living room. I just was losing my mind much quicker, as I'm sure many of you can relate to during the coronavirus, considering we are all pretty much trapped indoors. So moving sucks. It's awful. I don't know very many people that enjoy the process of moving. So the first thing you should really do is decide if you really want to move, or if what your problems are with your living space are more so about the functionality, and if it's something you can change versus something you can't change. I know a lot of things are very difficult right now with coronavirus, but if you want to move because you hate the wall color, that is a very easy fix. You can talk to your landlord, offer to paint it back if they don't want to let you paint it. Most landlords are very accommodating in that, and especially now realizing that most of us are spending anywhere from 10 to 24 whole hours at home at any given time consecutively. These are unprecedented times, as everybody likes to say. But if there are things that you can't fix, or your landlord can't fix, or would be too costly to do so, like a washer dryer, or, you know, I live in a studio and I really want to live in a 1-bedroom. That's something that my landlord can't fix in my current apartment. So I am going to be moving. So step number 1 is pick a budget and stick to it. The majority of apartments in the city of Portland and in the state of Oregon require you to earn at least 2 to 3 times the rental amount. So your rental amount is the base rent that you are going to pay to occupy a living space. So, for example, if you move into a studio and your rent is $1,000, there are additional, I have them in quotes, hidden fees that landlords can legally charge you that are in addition to your rent that will be pretty consistent every month. And those can include utilities, pet rent, parking space like a carport or garage or something like that. Some buildings have amenity fees that, you know, allow you access to the clubhouse, things like that. Utilities, most properties in Oregon, tenants will pay the utilities. So there's a couple ways that they do this, is that they either offer it on a flat rate, which, you know, $45 a month, you have unlimited use of water, sewer, and garbage. But some properties will do what's called a RUBS basis, which is, it stands for Ratio Utility Billback Service. And that is basically, they take the building use of water and sewer, and they have some property managers like to call it a magic formula. I don't think it's all that magical, although math is magical to me, where it calculates the number of occupants and the square footage of your living space, and basically allocates a percentage of the building's water usage to each person. And then you get billed for that. So that can fluctuate, but it'll generally be anywhere from $45 to, you know, $200, depending on, again, how big your apartment is, how many people live there, you know, things of that nature. And lastly, I want to mention that there is rent control in Oregon. It is new, fairly new over the last 2 years. So Portland, in the city of Portland, we passed it in 2018, I believe. And in the state of Oregon, it was passed in 2019. Basically, if your building is 15 years or older, your landlord is not allowed to up your rent more than 7% plus whatever the consumer price index is, which I know last year it was 3.3. So last year your landlord could not raise your rent more than 10.3% in a 12-month period. That means that if you go in and you sign your lease and you don't have, you say that your landlord is paying for utilities, your rent, everything that you are paying for in your building comes to a total of $1,000. Full disclosure, $1,000 is pretty low rent in Portland these days. But I'm going to be using that because my math skills are terrible. I use Excel, so please bear with me if my math is not the best. So if your rent, pet rent, parking, everything comes to $1,000 a month, your landlord cannot raise your rent more than $100 in a 12-month period. And that includes if you decide to rent a parking space or you get a pet. If you go to your landlord and say, I got a pet, I need to start paying pet rent. If you haven't lived in that unit for over a year, your landlord cannot legally charge you that amount. If your building is over 15 years old, I will say. So rent control in Oregon is pretty new. A lot of people hate it because it's kind of complicated. I won't delve too much more into that, but if anybody has any questions about it, feel free to reach out to me at any time, either during this webinar or after. I'm pretty knowledgeable about it, and it's pretty confusing if you don't know about it. And then after you pick your budget, I generally also, for me, I recognize that the hidden fees can run from anywhere from like $50 to $100 extra a month. So when picking my budget, if my all expense budget is $1,100, I'm going to tell whatever manager of whatever apartment I'm looking at that my maximum budget is $1,000, because I know about all these other hidden fees that are going to come in and that are going to make me exceed my budget. So if you go in with a lower budget and don't tell whoever you're looking at apartments with your upper range, typically they'll work with you. So step 2 is make a need versus want list. So I like to think of it as, it'd be nice if I had and an I can't live without. So for example, these are some of mine. For me personally, in my apartment, I can't live without a dishwasher. My apartment does not have one currently, and I hate washing dishes. And I know it's so trivial and so silly, and a lot of you are probably thinking it's not that bad, but I don't know. I can't get past it. So my must-haves always include a dishwasher. And some people, like a bathtub where they can't use a stand shower. So I know I have a couple friends that, can't live without a walk-in closet or a bathtub. Those two are extra amenities. But also in this process, you can look around and look at other apartments and see what general trends are. In new apartment buildings, the trend is smaller is better. So if you're looking for a lot more space, you might want to consider an older apartment building or an older house, just because they tend to, in the design structures and the way that that's all changed over time, older apartments built closer to the turn of the 20th century tend to be much bigger than rental units. And new apartment complexes are tiny, tiny, tiny little things that, have all the amenities but don't have any space. So it sort of is it'd be nice if I had 1,000 square foot 2-bedroom, but I definitely can't live without a washer dryer. So you have to be willing to make those compromises and recognize what they are. And you can also, in all honesty, it's probably just easiest to pick a neighborhood that you want to live in, that you think that your budget will allow for. And then from there, look at individual buildings, and you can, see what amenities people are offering now. Like a new one is a dog wash station. People are very adamant about that. But just to see what's out there and what could be in other apartment buildings and, things you never thought that you could live without. But all of this is to make sure you have a budget. It's so easy to get out of that budget. But once you have a budget, prices, it is a renter's market right now. Nobody wants to move in this pandemic. So it is definitely a renter's market. So if you wait long enough, the prices will likely drop in your favor and fit in your budget. Step 3, I love this apartment and I want to live here. Now what? It's different for every single apartment complex, especially those that are smaller properties that are owned and operated by the same person. They tend to have a little more disorganized operations in my experience. And everybody runs things differently. Some people will make you see the apartment before you apply, either via a virtual video tour or coming in and doing a contact-free tour of it. Application fees are different. Sometimes those goes toward the deposit, sometimes they don't. And given that nobody wants to move, a lot of places are offering specials. Sort of the process for pricing an apartment, there's a couple of software systems that will set prices for apartment complexes automatically on a daily basis, and they'll typically change prices either every day or once a week, typically at the beginning or the end of the week, in order to rent them. Specials like 1 month free rent, 6 months free rent are generally only offered the longer that a unit sits vacant. And they would rather offer those than reduce rent, because money makes people happy. If you've talked to Babe, you know this. So they would rather have, you under contract paying more rent and give you, 6 weeks free rather than, rent you the unit for a little less and make it easier for everybody. But no, they don't do things that way. We like to do things complicated in apartments. So you go, you tour, you love it, you apply, and you're approved. Next, you're gonna pick a move-in date. In the state of Oregon, you have to give 30-day notice to vacate your current home. Given that a lot of places are doing 1 month free to 8 weeks free rent, you can probably do an overlap where, for example, I'm moving this Saturday. I'm picking up my keys for my new apartment. However, I don't have to be out of my old apartment until June 12th. So I have a nice 3-week buffer where I can slowly shuttle all my things from one home to another. It just was the most convenient way for me to do things. I recognize that that's not always going to be the case. It's definitely a gambling game of whether you want to wait and see if prices are going to decrease or if specials are going to get offered. So it kind of, if you're in it for the long haul and you can play the waiting game, that's definitely the best bet because you can get to know things better. But in the next couple of months, I can see rental rates probably staying pretty consistent to only slightly dropping. And that's also in tracking the ones that I've been looking to live at in close-in Southeast. So pick your move-in date, make sure that you have enough time to get your current apartment ready or wherever you're living and move into your new place, and go see it again. It looks way different after you've officially signed your lease and decided that you're going to live there for the next year to however long. Read your lease very carefully. I know it's kind of like the terms and conditions for a lot of different platforms that we use on a daily basis where, it says that you're going to sacrifice your firstborn child to the gods and you don't know, and you sign in, then Google comes in and says, oh, gotcha, a lot of times there'll be hidden fees in there that I just don't want you to get surprised about. Some places like to charge an amenity fee that can either be monthly or it's like a one-time $500 deal. There's pet security deposits, your security deposit, just a lot of things. And if you don't understand something, you should ask your leasing agent, because if they don't know what it is either, you probably shouldn't be charged for it, is typically my view of it. And just get to know better what people are trying to charge you for. It's kind of like nobody is going to pull the wool over your eyes. It's just they're going to treat it like it's there, unless you sort of advocate for yourself and ask questions. No questions.
How negotiable is some of that stuff, Hangry? Like, if you get all the way to the point of having a contract and something hasn't been discussed, and you're saying,
so typically it really depends. A lot of the time, apartment complexes are just not used to seeing anybody give pushback pretty much. So it again really varies from place to place. Like smaller properties, they're typically more lenient because, if one unit is vacant out of 10 apartments, that's 10% of the whole property is vacant, and that's kind of how managers like to think. So if you're trying to negotiate down your rental deposit, your security deposit, usually pet deposits are pretty non-negotiable, which is, I have a pet and it's awful when I try to move because they want to charge me an arm and a leg for him, which is stupid in my opinion, but that's another story for another day. Some places you can negotiate on that. And then they're pretty much, a lot of apartment complexes right now are hurting for people to move in. So they'll probably be pretty willing to work with you. But again, it's very person dependent, property dependent. There's a lot of factors that go into it. But if you ask about it, the worst they could tell you is that there's nothing they can do. and you walk away, and you'll generally only lose $40 is what a typical application fee costs, $42, I believe. And you could risk losing that. But for the most part, there should not be many surprises in a lease document. They're all pretty straightforward. But I just like to, sometimes you go in and there's this $500 administrative fee that I never agreed to. And if you ask them about it, chances are 8 other people have asked about it and also didn't have to pay it. So you might not have to pay it.
Yeah, I think that's so true. And right now, I mean, my understanding, and I'm not inside the industry or anything, is that there are so many new modern buildings that are being built all the time.
Yep.
And they're largely vacant at this moment. So I just feel like you can use this climate to advocate for yourself, but am I not understanding that if you like that kind of an apartment?
You just got to my next slide there, Catherine. So the Portland is a hot spot. And if you've been here over the last year, I've been here 5 years, like I said. I'm sure people who have been here longer than that have even seen it change more significantly than I have. Rents have been trending upward over the last 5 years at an insanely rapid rate. And that is because I think last year we were the second most popular moving destination for people moving to a new city. And that's judged based on like the number of moving companies that move into the city from another state versus the number of moving companies that move people out of the state. It's the net migration, I guess, is what that is. But so many people were moving here from San Francisco, Los Angeles, San Diego, New York City, Seattle, where you charge $3,600 for a 1-bedroom and nobody bats an eye because that's a steal in New York. In Portland, that is insane. That is astronomical. And people don't realize that we control what rental rates are. When people go and build a building, they will have what they think that rent can get when it is completed. So what happens then is they can't predict for a crisis like this. Nobody predicted coronavirus, which basically made nobody want to move. So a lot of these construction projects that have been happening over the last few years have had to significantly drop the rents that they thought they would be able to achieve in typical market conditions. So right now we are in unprecedented times as far as rentals go, because over the last 5 years, rental rates have been increasing, and they were nearing that sort of maximum, but they hadn't quite hit it yet. And then coronavirus happened, and everybody's losing their jobs and everybody's being furloughed. People can't afford it. So properties that were already fairly less expensive that have existed for a while have seen this happen before in 2008. They've seen it happen before on a seasonal basis. Rents typically tend to be cheaper in the winter because nobody wants to move in the rain, and they're more expensive in the summer because it's beautiful weather and you can't complain. But in a pandemic like this, people can't afford it. So the properties that are newly built they are more resistant to change because the investors that built the property want to get as high rents and see as high of a return on their investment as they possibly can. Whereas properties that are existing are like, no, we have a stable income basis. We're already projecting a loss from this because a lot of people have, I think for the apartments that I've surveyed back before I got furloughed, I think it was typically like 1 to 2 people for every building that I looked at. People said that they would need some sort of assistance either in, holding off on paying rent for an extended period of time, or working out a rent payment plan. That's been very popular. But so these older buildings that have been established and have an existing tenant base and are fully occupied, they realize that, you know, nobody's going to move there if they can't afford it. So they're dropping their rents significantly. Like the building I'm moving into is luxury. I think it was built as condos in like 2008. Then the condo market crashed, so they converted it into apartments. A year ago, the apartment that I'm moving into was renting for about $1,600. My lease is $1,200. That is an insane difference considering that maybe 3 months ago, this apartment probably would have gone for about $1,600 to $1,700. So rents are rapidly decreasing, especially for 1-bedrooms and studios, because most people are looking to live with roommates. And so 2-bedrooms and 3-bedroom apartments tend to be cheaper on a, you know, I have a roommate, I only have to pay half the rent basis. It's becoming more affordable. So 2-bedrooms and 3-bedrooms are on higher demand, causing 1-bedroom prices to decrease. And in addition to that, a lot more places are offering concessions or specials because they're just trying to get people in the door. Once you get somebody in the door, there's so many options out there right now that have mostly been vacant since February when all of this began. Winter is already a very difficult leasing time, and then you throw a pandemic on top of that. These units have been sitting vacant since about February, and they just want somebody in them. They just want their money every month from that apartment. It's a loss every month that it is not filled. So they're offering concessions to get people in the door and hopefully pay a higher rental rate until it sits vacant for a little more extended periods of time, then they'll drop it. It's a very strange cycle. And that is pretty much all that I can think of for the process of apartments. If anybody has any other questions, Nugget and I are here to help. Like I've said,
is that your dog that people charge money for?
That's my dog that I have to pay $40 extra a month for. Yes.
This is insane. So I'm a landlord of one apartment in Selwood, a duplex, the second floor. And I know it's hard to deal with one individual person versus a bureaucratic system sometimes, but I've got to say, like, I don't charge for pets. Humans are way more costly
So,
my property than pets.
This is also actually kind of interesting. As a pet owner, I'm more interested in this than other people in my office because I have a dog and I've had to pay for him everywhere I've lived. So a lot of apartment complexes have, again, this is a stylistic change that has happened over the years. If you go into an apartment that was built prior to 2000, there's a very strong chance that there is carpet throughout the entire apartment, except in the kitchen and the bathroom and the dining room. Now there's this new, it's called luxury plank vinyl, or luxury vinyl plank LVP, and it is this fake wood flooring that like snaps into place, and landlords love it because if one of the tiles is ruined, you can very easily pick it up. So a lot of places would not accept pets to begin with, which is foolish in Portland because everybody has pets here. Everybody has pets. And they would just, reject half their tenant base. And then the people who really wanted to live there would go and have their animals falsely certified as service animals or honestly certified as service animals. But a lot of people have been dishonest in that and just gone to a doctor and gotten, a letter saying that their dog is their emotional support animal just so that they can live in their apartment building that does not allow pets. And they don't have to pay pet rent. So many apartment brokers, because when you buy an apartment building, you buy the whole building. Many apartment brokers have pointed this out to landlords and owners saying, if you don't allow pets, you're alienating half your tenant base. In Portland, I think half is a little conservative. It's probably higher, but you're alienating half your tenant base. And, if you just say pets are an extra $20 a month, landlords, people will pay it. People are inherently good. You will have a couple people that go the dishonest route and, just really don't want to pay an extra $20 a month and get their dog verified as a service animal, or their cat or sugar glider or whatever animal. One apartment manager was telling me that she had somebody that had a teacup pig that was an emotional support animal. Like people will find a way. So a lot of owners are like, you know, if I can just charge $20 a month for a pet, like people will say yes to it. They won't cheat the system. So with this new flooring, circling back to the LVP, it's a lot easier for people with pets. And certain buildings will even have units that allow pets and units that do not, because if your dog, you know, goes to the bathroom on the carpet, they need to replace the carpet when you move out. And that costs a lot more than if they didn't need to replace the carpet at all. So they have just started using that like $20 a month as sort of a reserve for when you move out to, you know, replace the carpet or, you know, do like refinish the baseboards in the unit because your dog chewed it or things like that. I've gone into like brand new apartments where a dog just like scratched the hell out of the front door because he missed his people so much.
That's so funny. I've never had that with all the animals that I've lived upstairs. They've all been delightful, but I think that's partially because I think that it's a, you know, it's a small house, so it's not stressful for the animals when their humans aren't home. And also we let the people know like, hey, so-and-so's barking. Do you want me to let him out? So we're concerned for the animals' well-being as well. So I think animals can sense that.
You sound like a very good landlord.
I try. I have been in a situation where I could not be the kind person that I wanted to be much longer because the person kept thinking that their health issues were due to something in the household, and I kept having mold testing, and I did it 3 times at great expense to prove to the person that there was no, it's an old house, right? So you will get mildew if you don't run a fan in the bathroom.
Right, and that's with every apartment.
Yeah, there is a fan in the bathroom, and you will get mildew if you don't run it. So not to go too far into that, but you know, I have been on both sides of this, and can echo what you're saying about communicating in terms of really reading your lease agreement, because people are people and they put stuff in there. I do that too. I put weird stuff in there because I don't want someone using Drano on our drains because our pipes are from 1904. I want them to use the stuff that I do. So that's weirdly in the lease. And if someone were to use Drano on my drains, I would totally charge them for the plumbing.
Exactly. And I know like older apartments will have, and some newer apartments will have clauses in there that 75% of your apartment needs to be covered in a rug. That's in my current lease because I have all hardwood floors and my apartment building was built in 1912. So like if I walk around my apartment in shoes with a heel on them, my downstairs neighbors know what room of my apartment I'm in at any time. So to help with that, they, you know, request that you have 75% of your apartment covered in rugs, and, you know, just there's strange things like that that you don't consider when signing a lease.
Yeah. What is the top, Amy, Hangry, what do you consider to be the best website for looking for apartments in Portland that does that sort of price comparison you're talking about and has, if I were looking for an apartment in Portland, I would really want to compare both old and new buildings. But from when I've done some searching just to make sure my pricing is good on my unit, I found that most of those websites just capture the new construction buildings.
Mm-hmm. So it depends. So there's a lot of property management companies, and a lot of them have their own specialties that they work with. Like Greystar is one big company. They specialize in like luxury high-end apartments. If you give them an older apartment complex, they're not going to know how to run it as well as an apartment complex, apartment management company like KBC or Round Hill Pacific. They sort of specialize in the older unit types that were built, you know, in the early 1900s, that are those bricker style walk-up apartments, things like that. So it really varies. There's good management companies and bad management companies. I don't want to shout anybody out and tell them that they're doing a poor job or anything, but I've seen it all. And I have my own personal opinions about certain companies. but they all have their own specialties. So really just knowing sort of, if you want an older vintage house, look up like just a quick Google search of like vintage apartments, Portland. There's management companies that specialize in like the unit you have, Catherine, where, you know, it's a duplex and they'll manage the upstairs rental for you. And there's like Fox Management, Sleep Sound Management, David Nace Property Management. There's 1.5 million different management companies. So a quick Google search is usually a pretty good way. And so apartments.com and Apartment Finder, those will be more geared toward the higher luxury properties, because those properties will typically pay apartments.com to sponsor their ads and sort of push them to the top of the search. So, you know, you're looking for a vintage property with a clawfoot tub, and it'll be like, you should live at Park Avenue West, which is the luxury one downtown by Target. And it's like, this building was built 5 years ago.
Right.
I don't think they have clawfoot tubs, but it's because that property will pay apartments.com a fee to have them come up in everybody's search. Zillow is good for if you want to live in sort of like a house type rental like you were running, Catherine. Then Facebook Marketplace has been pretty good for rentals. Craigslist is kind of on the declines for like elevator served luxury buildings, but they're really great for like owner managed deals and smaller, you know, 5 to 10 unit properties. That's where most owners or managers will place their ads on Craigslist. But yeah,
I mean, things are getting more and more spammed on Craigslist, where they're just
exactly.
But I honestly, over the last couple of years, wherever else I've posted, Craigslist has been where people who've wanted to come live, you know, in our kind of quirky, fun apartment that I'm very honest about. You know, it has a lot of extra space, but it's not legal bedrooms and, you know, a lot of the old house stuff, right? So yeah, I'm very honest about it and transparent. And Craigslist has been where I found people that are just into it, which is weird because Craigslist is just a, you know, spammer's paradise these days. But still finding pretty good vintage rental properties on there.
Yeah, Craigslist is great for vintage rental properties. And it's generally because it's free to post things. Whereas if you want to, you know, rent, and older properties tend to rent for less than the newer properties. So if you're only getting, say, $900 a month for a 1-bedroom, you don't want to spend $100 a month advertising for that 1-bedroom. You'd rather just save that money and advertise for free on Craigslist. You know, your price will speak for itself a lot of the times for those less expensive properties. But Craigslist, yeah, I love Craigslist for everything. I just
don't date on Craigslist, but
I would never, but I do occasionally like to read them and feel better about my life. So.
They're pretty good. Yeah, they're pretty good. Well, thank you, Hangry. Thank you for this time, and I super appreciate having such a concise and well put together presentation for people to review, and thanks for your time doing that.
Yeah, of course. And anybody, like I said, I have nothing but free time on my hands lately. So if anybody wants to email me, my email is amy, AMY, @rosecityrollers.com. I will get back to you and I can help you find an apartment and answer any additional questions that anybody has afterwards, after this gets posted.
Cool. And I was so surprised when you came on board and snagged up Amy at rosecityrollers.com. I was like, why is that not already taken? But somehow here you are. So good.
Got really lucky with that one.
Good for you. All right. Have a great night. Pet your cute dog.
All right. Oh, I will. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.